When your own family writes you off as a failure, the silence that follows can be deafening. But sometimes, walking away isn't defeat. It's the start of a transformation no one saw coming. This is the story of how a failure built everything they said I couldn't, and made the people who doubted me face the truth. After being labeled the family disappointment and cut out of his parents' financial favoritism, Ethan vanishes from their lives. 2 years later, his brother's desperate call exposes how everything they believed about him, and success, was dead wrong. The restaurant smelled like money, oak tables, crystal glasses, that faint whiff of expensive wine Ethan could never quite afford. He sat there in a plain button-up, watching his parents beam proudly across the table at Thomas and his wife, Ashley. Thomas was mid-story, laughing too loud as he talked about their new place, a 2-story home in a pristine cul-de-sac, freshly bought with a $250,000 gift from Mom and Dad. Ethan hadn't touched his drink. His father's voice sliced through the noise. "You see, son," he said, turning to Ethan, "Thomas knows how to invest. He's smart with opportunities. That's why we wanted to help him get settled." Ethan forced a smile. "That's great, Dad. Really, I'm happy for him." His mother leaned forward, her tone sharp and sweet all at once. "We just didn't want to make the same mistake twice, honey." He blinked. "Mistake? You remember that cafe idea you had? We loaned you money for that and, well, it didn't exactly turn into anything, did it?" Ashley let out a tiny, polite laugh. Thomas smirked. Ethan felt the heat crawl up his neck. "It didn't work out, no. But I paid you back every cent." "That's not the point," his mother said, setting down her fork. You don't have the same drive Thomas has. He plans. You just try things." The word try hit harder than he expected. He wanted to say something, anything, but every sentence died in his throat. He stared at the steak in front of him, perfectly cooked, perfectly cold. His father leaned back, satisfied. "We just want to invest in a future that looks promising, Ethan. You can't keep chasing hobbies." Ethan's eyes flicked to his brother, who avoided eye contact. "You mean you want to invest in a son you can brag about?" The table went quiet. "That's not fair," Thomas finally said. "They've helped you too." Ethan gave a short, bitter laugh. "Yeah, they helped me learn my place." He looked at his mother's expression, offended, wounded, but not surprised. It was like she'd been waiting for him to snap to prove her right. He pushed his chair back. "You know what? I think I'm done here." "Ethan," his dad said, his voice stern like a teacher scolding a child, "don't walk away. You always do this when someone tells you the truth." He turned toward him. "Maybe I'm just tired of your version of the truth." The eyes around the table followed him as he walked out. No one called after him. No one followed. Outside, the cool night air hit him like freedom and shame all at once. He stood by his old pickup, staring at the reflection of the restaurant's golden light in the windshield. For years, he'd tried to prove he was worthy of their pride. College, jobs, projects. Every time he failed, they reminded him who he was supposed to be. The other son. That night, standing in the parking lot, Ethan finally understood. He'd been living for applause that was never coming. He got into his truck, turned the key, and sat there in silence. His phone buzzed. A message from his mother. "We love you, but you need to grow up, Ethan." He read it twice, then deleted it. As he pulled onto the highway, the lights of the city faded behind him. No destination in mind, just the open road, a few $1,000s in his savings account, and the kind of peace that comes only when you stop begging for approval. He whispered to himself. Almost like a promise. If I'm the failure, then I'll fail on my own terms. The night swallowed. The sound of his truck as he drove toward whatever waited beyond the dark horizon. The land was nothing special, just 6 acres of overgrown brush and an old barn leaning like it had given up long before Ethan arrived. The property sat at the end of a dirt road outside a quiet Tennessee town, where time seemed to move slower and people waved just because. It wasn't much, but it was his. He'd bought it with nearly everything he had left, signing the papers with trembling hands and a strange calm in his chest. The realtor had stared at him like he was crazy. "You sure you want to live out there, son?" "Place has been empty for 20 years. Ethan had smiled. "Then it's overdue for a comeback." The first few weeks were brutal. No insulation. No plumbing. The roof leaked when it rained, and the nights got so cold he slept in his truck sometimes, wrapped in an old blanket. But every morning, he woke up and worked. Ripped out the rotted boards. Cleaned the barn inch by inch. Salvaged what he could. There was no audience. No judgment. Just the sound of his hammer echoing against the silence. He found comfort in small wins. The first wall that didn't collapse. The day he got the generator running. The first time he cooked breakfast on a hot plate without setting off sparks. In town, he started to become a familiar face. "Morning, stranger," said a woman at the hardware store one day. "You're the fella fixing up old Miller's place, aren't you?" "Trying to," Ethan replied, brushing sawdust off his jacket. "Well," she said with a grin, "folks been saying it's nice seeing that land come alive again." "You keep at it." He nodded, a little embarrassed, but inside something warmed. He hadn't heard encouragement in years, months past. The barn began to change shape, like it was remembering what it once was. He put up new beams, sanded the floors, turned old wood into furniture. What started as survival became something else, a quiet kind of purpose. He'd always liked working with his hands, but now every project carried meaning. A rebuilt door, a handmade table, even the garden out back, where he planted tomatoes and herbs, gave him a sense of life returning. He started posting photos of his woodwork online, more to document the progress than anything. But soon people began to message him, asking if he sold his pieces, if he could make something custom. He hesitated at first. Then he said yes. His first sale was a reclaimed oak coffee table, $200. It wasn't much, but when he wrapped it up and sent it off, he felt something shift. Maybe he wasn't a failure after all. Maybe he'd just been trying to grow in the wrong soil. One evening, as the sun set over the fields, Ethan stood outside the barn, his barn, watching the golden light spill through the newly installed windows. He thought of his parents, of their words, the way they'd looked at him like he'd already been written off. He didn't hate them. He just didn't need them anymore. The crickets sang. The air smelled like pine and oil and hope. He whispered to himself, "I'm not failing. I'm finally starting." Inside, the generator hummed and the lights flickered to life. That night, he worked late, shaping a piece of maple into the curve of a chair arm, steady and focused. Sawdust floated in the air like dust motes in a dream. Out here, no one interrupted him. No one called him a disappointment, just the steady rhythm of creation. He didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of something far bigger than a cabin in the woods. It was the start of a new life, the one he'd been denied but built anyway, and somewhere, miles away. His family still told stories about how Ethan disappeared. None of them knew he was quietly building an empire from wood and silence. 2 years. That's how long it had been since Ethan last heard his parents' voices. No calls, no texts, not even a birthday message. At first, the silence was hard. He'd check his phone out of habit, scroll through old photos, hover over their numbers. But eventually, he stopped expecting anything, and once he stopped expecting, peace found him. The barn had transformed. What used to be a sagging skeleton of wood was now a 2-story cabin with wide glass windows, a wraparound porch, and warm cedar siding that glowed in the morning sun. A small wooden sign by the driveway read, "Hollow Creek Woodworks." Inside, the hum of tools mixed with music from an old radio. Orders came in regularly now. Custom tables, bookshelves, cabinets. He shipped furniture across the state and had customers returning, sometimes just to meet the man who made that perfect handmade piece. He never bragged online. He didn't post pictures of himself, only his work. But the photos spoke for him, quietly and confidently. The way he always wished he could speak to his father. Sometimes, Late at night, when he sat by the fire with a cup of coffee, memories would drift in. His mother's voice. "You always take the hard road, Ethan." His father's laugh. "You'll understand responsibility when you stop chasing dreams." The words used to sting. Now they were just echoes, ghosts that couldn't touch him anymore. He smiled at the thought. They wouldn't believe it even if he told them how he was debt-free, running a profitable business, and building something real. It wasn't flashy success. It was quiet, steady, earned with splinters and sweat. The town had accepted him as one of their own. He had friends now, neighbors who dropped by to chat, a retired carpenter named Bill who helped him with heavy projects, and a local diner owner, Grace, who always made sure his coffee never ran dry. "You're the talk of Main Street," Grace said one morning, pouring him a refill. Ethan chuckled. "That can't be good." "Oh, it's all good things. Folks respect what you've built out there." She tilted her head. "You think your family knows?" He paused. "If they do, they haven't said a word." "Well," she smiled, "maybe they'll come around." He didn't answer, because deep down, he wasn't sure he wanted them to. While Ethan's life grew stronger, Thomas's started to unravel. His business deals had gone sour. His fancy house, funded by their parents, was bleeding money. Ashley had left 6 months earlier, taking their son to her mother's. Ethan didn't know any of this. But one chilly afternoon, about 2 years after their last family dinner, Thomas sat in his car outside a foreclosure notice taped to his garage door, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He thought about calling his parents, but even they were tired of helping. His father had said, "You'll figure it out, son." "You always do." This time Thomas didn't have a plan, so he just drove, mile after mile, through back roads and small towns, aimlessly chasing peace. And then, almost by accident, he turned down a long dirt road bordered by wild grass and pine. At first, he didn't notice. Then his eyes caught the wooden sign, Hollow Creek Woodworks. He slowed the car, curiosity tugging at him. There, behind a white picket fence, stood a cabin that looked straight out of a magazine. Polished, warm, alive. A man was outside, hauling lumber from a truck. The sun caught his face just right. Thomas froze. No, it can't be. Ethan looked different. Broader, confident. He moved like someone who owned his life. Thomas pulled over and watched in stunned silence. His brother, the family's so-called failure, was standing on property more beautiful than anything their parents' money had ever built. Heart-pounding, he fumbled for his phone. "Dad," he said when the line clicked, "you need to come here right now. You need to see this." "You need to see what Ethan's done." He stared out the window, still shaking. The failure wasn't gone. He'd just stopped playing by their rules, and somehow that made him unstoppable. Thomas couldn't stop pacing. He was parked just down the road from Ethan's property, his phone pressed to his ear, voice cracking with disbelief. "Dad, I'm telling you, he's living like a king out here." "You said he disappeared. You said he was probably renting somewhere or struggling, but he's not. You need to come see this." On the other end, their father sighed. "Thomas, calm down. I'm sure you're exaggerating. Ethan's always been dramatic. Maybe he fixed up a shed and made it look nice." Thomas's voice rose. "No, Dad, this isn't a shed, it's a damn estate. The place looks better than half the homes in Oak Ridge. He's got a business sign, a new truck, He stopped mid-sentence as Ethan walked out of the barn, wiping his hands on a rag, sunlight catching in his hair. Thomas's breath caught. "He's doing fine, Dad. Better than fine." 2 days later, the silver SUV rolled up the dirt road and stopped in front of Ethan's gate. He saw it coming from his porch, arms folded, heart steady. He hadn't seen that car in 2 years, but he'd always known this day would come. The door opened, and his father stepped out first, followed by his mother. Thomas trailed behind, looking uneasy. "Ethan!" his father called, trying for a tone that sounded cheerful, but the awkwardness in his voice betrayed him. Ethan wiped his palms on his jeans and met them halfway down the drive. Hey, Dad, Mom, Thomas. His mother looked around, eyes wide. My goodness, you did all this? He nodded once. Every bit, Thomas gave a nervous laugh. Man, this place is unreal. I told Dad you weren't kidding around. Ethan didn't answer. His father's gaze traveled across the property. Clean fences, blooming garden, hand-built furniture on the porch. Well, his father finally said, forcing a chuckle. Looks like you got lucky, huh? Ethan met his eyes evenly. Lucky? Yeah, his father said, gesturing vaguely. Finding a business that took off like this. Right place, right time. Not everyone gets that kind of break? Ethan smiled faintly. No, Dad, this wasn't luck. This was work. Every nail, every board, every sale, none of it just happened. Silence. The kind that settles when truth lands too hard. His mother fidgeted. We were worried about you, you know. You just disappeared. I didn't disappear, he said softly. I just stopped calling people who made me feel small. Thomas looked away. Ethan, his father said, defensive now, we were trying to teach you responsibility, to make sure you didn't throw your life away chasing dreams. He tilted his head. And how'd that turn out for Thomas? The jab hit hard and Thomas's face darkened. Hey, I made some mistakes, all right? I know, Ethan said quietly. We all do, his mother's voice trembled. We never meant to hurt you. He exhaled, looking at the porch, the handmade swing swaying in the breeze. Maybe not, but you did. You made me believe I wasn't enough unless I was like him? His father shifted uncomfortably. That's not true, isn't it? Ethan asked. You gave him a house and you gave me a lecture. You called me a failure while he spent your money like it grew on trees. Tell me, Dad, who really learned responsibility? For the first time, his father had no words. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere, a bird called in the distance. Thomas broke the silence. I didn't know, man. I thought you were gone. Everyone did. Ethan's voice softened. Yeah, and that's what gave me peace. He gestured toward the cabin. You see this place? It's not about the house. It's about knowing I could build something without needing to be rescued. His father's eyes glistened, pride and regret colliding in a way he couldn't hide. Ethan, his mother said carefully, maybe we could have dinner sometime, just talk. As a family again, Ethan hesitated. He wanted to say yes, but the years of silence weighed heavier than their sudden change of tone. He gave a polite nod. We'll see. Then he turned, walking back toward the porch, his boots crunching the gravel. Behind him, his father called out, voice small now. We're proud of you, son. Ethan paused but didn't look back. Took you long enough to say it. He stepped up onto the porch, leaving them standing by the gate, staring at a man they no longer recognized. The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of gravel crunching outside again. He looked through the window. His parents' SUV was back. He sighed, set down his coffee, and stepped onto the porch. His father was already halfway up the path, his expression serious. His mother followed, wringing her hands. Thomas wasn't with them this time. Morning, Ethan said evenly. Didn't expect company again so soon. His father offered a tight smile. We, wanted to talk. Just us. Ethan crossed his arms. All right, talk. His mother took a step forward. It's Thomas, she began, voice shaking. He's in trouble. Lost the house, the job? Ashley left. He's really struggling. Ethan nodded slowly. I'm sorry to hear that. His father cleared his throat. We were hoping maybe you could help him get back on his feet. He said you've got the business, the space, the money now. Ethan blinked. You want me to bail him out? Not bail, his father corrected quickly. Just support. Maybe a loan. You know, family helping family. The words hung in the air like smoke. Ethan laughed, not mockingly, but softly, like someone who'd already made peace with a sad truth. You mean the way you helped me? His mother's eyes filled. We made mistakes, Ethan, we know that. But he's your brother. I know, he said, his tone calm, steady. And I love him. But I learned something out here. You can't save people who won't save themselves. His father stepped forward, voice rising. Don't be cruel. You have a chance to do what's right. Ethan met his gaze. No, Dad. I have a chance to do what's finally right for me. The silence between them stretched. His father's shoulders sagged, and for the first time, the man who'd always spoken with authority looked small. You really have changed, he said quietly. Ethan smiled faintly. I had to. The old me wouldn't have survived out here. His mother's lip trembled. We thought we were doing what was best for you. We really did. I know, Ethan said. But you were teaching me that love was something I had to earn, that I had to be successful to be worthy of it. I spent half my life chasing that approval, and when I stopped, that's when I finally became happy. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She looked around the property, the flowers, the workshop, the peace, and whispered, We didn't know. He nodded. You didn't want to. His father swallowed hard. So what now? You're just done with us? Ethan's eyes softened. No, I'm just done trying to be who you wanted me to be. They stood there in silence, the breeze whispering through the pines, 1,000 unspoken words between them. Finally, his mother reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Your father wanted to give you this, she said. Ethan didn't take it. What is it? Money, his father said gruffly. Just something to make things right. Ethan shook his head. You can't buy right, Dad. I already earned everything I need. He looked at them both, really looked. The pride, the regret, the years of distance that no envelope could erase. Then he walked to the gate and opened it, holding it steady. You should go. Thomas needs you more than I do. His mother hesitated, tears spilling now. We lost you, didn't we? Ethan gave her a sad smile. No, Mom. You let me go a long time ago. I just finally learned to stop waiting for you to come back. His father stared at him, jaw tight, eyes glistening. He gave a single nod, turned, and walked back to the SUV. As they pulled away, Ethan stood by the fence, the sound of the engine fading down the dirt road. He didn't feel angry or triumphant, just free. He turned back toward his home, his creation, his peace, and whispered to himself, You taught me love had a price tag. I just stopped paying it. The wind picked up, scattering sawdust across the porch like glitter in the sun. Inside, his phone buzzed, an online order for a custom dining table. He smiled, set down his coffee, and went back to work. No drama, no shouting, just the sound of wood meeting purpose. He didn't need their approval anymore. He had his own life now, and that was worth more than any inheritance. A year later, Ethan sat on his porch swing, sipping coffee as the morning fog rolled through the valley. The cabin had become more than a home. It was a story written in wood and resilience. He'd heard through a neighbor that Thomas had moved to a small apartment in town, trying to rebuild. His parents visited sometimes, but they never came back up the road to Hollow Creek. And that was all right. He wasn't angry anymore. Just grateful for distance, for peace, for growth that pain had forced him into. Sometimes he thought about that night in the restaurant, the look on his parents' faces when they called him a failure. He realized now they weren't cruel. They were scared. Scared of seeing someone walk a road they didn't understand. But he understood something they never did. Failure isn't falling short of someone else's expectations. It's giving up on your own. He looked out over the garden, the barn glowing gold in the sunrise, and smiled. You were right about one thing, Dad, he murmured. I did finally learn responsibility. Just not the kind you meant. And with that, Ethan leaned back, letting the peace of Hollow Creek fill the silence that once held disappointment.